Hello and welcome back. I've been busy for the last couple weeks here learning about stained glass while working on this project for my niece. It's her birthday present and it's gotten a bit large and complicated. And so it's taken me a bit longer than I expected. So I decided to go ahead and make a different video, this one here, and melt down some of the scrap pieces that I got from this project, as well as mess around with a Coke bottle, a drink bottle, and see what I can do. And so this is what that video is about. It's more about trial and error, and it's going to be a good educational experience, I think. Normally, when I melt together two pieces of glass, I like to do it in the flame. However, this glass is working at such a lower temperature that this close to the torch is practically burning, so I might have to work it further out in the flame or a little differently altogether. And so here, I'm melting down some soft glass, also known as soda lime, which can be a little more temperamental to rapid temperature changes. You might notice I'm rotating the glass quite often, and that's to keep a nice even heat base and also to keep it from dripping off the end and falling on the desk. I've noticed it can help as well to go a little slower and more consistent, unless it is dripping faster, then you'll need to spin it more quickly. And so the idea here is to melt it down into a nice even shape, like a sphere. That way I can pull it out into a nice even rod. I'll use that rod then to color or apply that color to the glass in some way. The clear glass is sort of like a canvas, whereas the recycled scraps here will be sort of the paint that's painted onto the canvas. And of course you can purchase pre-made rods as well, clear rods or colored ones. If you are starting out in the lamp working process, I would recommend going that route just to make things a little easier. But when it comes to recycling glass into my work, it would come down to the object I'm trying to make, if I have a process for it. I also don't have the best equipment to recycle it, so it does get a little bit rough like this. I do enjoy the stained glass. I think it's a little less stressful, mainly because it's cold working, so I can kind of walk away at any point. But there is still a lot of technique and skill to be learned there. I'm still getting used to the tools themselves. So we'll see what happens here in the future. It should be exciting. I do have some ideas already, even though it's a little bit early to be coming up with some. I'm just curious if I can mix some lamp working and stained glass techniques together. And for this next pull, I'm going to use gravity as my main tool. It's going to take a lot of heat control. You might also notice me kind of jabbing the glass in and out of the flame. This is a way to slowly raise the temperature up so I don't give it such a thermal shock. I'm heating up the middle section. That way there's some weight on the bottom to help pull it down a bit once it gets to that liquidy state. And so if you can imagine a bit of frozen honey or syrup that you're trying to thaw out over a flame onto some pancakes or something, it's kind of like that, but the glass is always frozen. It's a very interesting thing and very educational as well. I know getting into it, it may seem like the glass just wants to crack at random. You know, things are happening randomly. But just because something seems random doesn't necessarily mean there isn't some kind of underlying cause that's causing the problem or the effect. So with this soda lime bottle being very thick, I decided to go in very slowly to warm it up. And now that it's at the liquid state, it's kind of no longer solid enough to crack, and I can even blow it out and reshape it. I'll want to keep the area up towards the working temperature, which is right below the liquid state, just a bit solid. Here I'm leading the flame in front of the colored glass in my hand. And I'm rotating the bottle, rotating the canvas. And so I'm not really drawing a circle, but drawing a straight line and rotating the glass underneath it to make a circle. And so why a piece of glass may crack comes down to a few variables. First is what type of glass. All materials do expand and contract with temperature change. And so in the case of glass, we have usually work in two areas for art. Borosilicate, which expands less with temperature change, or soda lime, a soft glass, which I'm using here, which expands a little bit more. Next up, you have the rate of temperature. The faster the rate you're trying to push heat into the glass, the worse it's going to respond. You have to kind of think of the glass not as just one layer, but layer on layer and layer of these molecules. And if they're expanding at different rates, inside the inside layer is cool, the outside layer is hot. Once they expand, you start to develop thermal stress. That's when you get cracks. And so the third variable would be the thickness of the glass you're working with. You know, a thicker piece has more layers of molecules, so you're going to end up with more of a problem with if the other two variables are out of whack. And so to give you an example, if I had maybe a thick piece of soda lime on a hot flame, I'd be much more cautious because it's working in the wrong trifecta. But if it was borosilicate and a softer flame and a thin piece of thin rod, then it'd be much more assured. I'd be less stressed because the glass would most likely be less stressed. And then it does complicate things because when you work on an area and then come back, it does contain stress because it cools and the outside layers are contracting rapidly and the inside layers aren't. And so it's cooled with some stress in it and you come back to it, then that's when it sometimes wants to pop, explode, crack, what have you. And so for an ashtray, for example, that's been probably warmed and cooled many, many, many times with cigarette butts, they just like to explode, basically. Just pew. And so what happened here, I tried to draw some straight red lines up the side of the vessel, and probably within 10 seconds, it started to develop some hard cracks all the way through from inside to out. And so the vessel might have been a little bit stressed already as I was working on the bottom area, which means that there would have been a gradient of heat working its way towards the middle. So the warming and cooling of that area could have caused it to develop some mechanical stress-like forces. And so although that could have contributed to the cracking factor, largely the responsibility was laying the molten glass up into that colder area. As a rule of thumb, you never want to apply hot glass onto cold glass. It's just way too quick of a transition in temperature, which most likely will do this and break the entire thing in half. And so it's good to remember to keep the area you're working on up in working temperature, but then also preheat the areas you're going to be moving to. And so I tried to save that bottom that I was working on and turn it into a little glass dish. As they say in Lampworking, it's sometimes not what you create, but what you can save. And now I'm just melting the bottle. I'm not really sure what to do with it. And I'd like to say too, I do appreciate having access to this equipment, being able to explore these kind of properties. It's very neat from a scientific point of view and an artistic point of view as well. And I appreciate the camera as well, which allows me to bring my experience to you, this fun little journey I'm on. I hope you kind of pick up and learn some fun things as much as I'm learning here. And If not, that's alright either. You know, just having fun and enjoying the experience. Coming along for the ride, as they say. That's always fun. Speaking of which, here is Shake. The cats have been doing very well, very grown up now. And so, if I haven't said it recently, thank you for watching. Thank you for enjoying the show, coming along. Having an audience to view your work is really a gift, or really a bonus for an artist. A lot can be gained for the artist through the creational process, or at the very least be therapeutic. Unfortunately, finances do play a role, sometimes add extra stress into the creative process. With material cost, tools, also, of course, food and shelter. I do need to look at it more as an opportunity, a chance to shift my focus on a different kind of work. I'm sure once I figure out a sales process that works well for me, it's just going to take off like fire. And so here I'm just shaping a marble off the end of the bottle. In marble making, there are graphite molds you can use to help finalize the shape of the marble. You do shape it about halfway or more by hand like this before getting it into the mold. And with practice, you can finish it up pretty well without the mold. However, it's difficult to get it 100% round. And I always say your hands are your best tools. It's best to practice with those before you try to completely fill your tool library. And with that experience, it should also help you figure out which tools are the most necessary for you, which ones you're going to need. You do want to wait about 5 or 10 seconds for the project to solidify before putting it into the kiln, or else it could slump and deform. Here are the stained glass scrap marbles. A bit rough, but you get the idea, along with the Coke bottom dish. And I'm not sure how compatible the expansion rates of those glasses were. That kind of goes back into that trifecta again of having very odd mix of glasses. And then the marble on the Coke bottle, it's a little bit artistic, but it was really just a display of skill, making a marble on something so odd like that. So thank you again for watching. This was an interesting journey here with soft glass. The bottle the label turned white and kind of burned off. It was some sort of plasticky enamel. It smelled pretty bad. I just turned the ventilation on and then left the building. And so that's what happened. But I might do another one. Let me know in the comment section what you think. And as always, stay melty.